Good afternoon everyone and welcome to the presentation on event-driven processing. Today we are going to discuss the UBS proposal for client subledger, wherein we'll be discussing the complexity of the project, what we feel are the various steps, and what are the key complexity areas we think might have been ignored during estimation. So what we have done is, as you all know, that the entire scope has been identified into 4 tranches, which tranche 1 focusing on event-driven processing, and of which key area is event creation or event generation. So what we have done is, we have taken the tranche 1, taken one of the services, which is the inbound gateway service, and blown it up to portray the complexity inherent in the tranche 1 and event-driven processing. So as you know, tranche 1 consists of inbound gateway, validation service, enrichment service, and reference data. And inbound gateway is the service which will get transactions and also generate event for those transactions. So when we say event generation, there are 4 types of events which will be generated. They are transaction based, time based, adjustment based, and others. So transaction based, like events for trades, payments, transfers, or lending and borrowing of stock. Time based, current events, past events, future events, and as of date events. Adjustment based means cancellation of a prior transaction or an event, rebooking of a transaction or regeneration of an event, adjustment to a priorly created or generated event, and others include asset servicing events, bulk trade, journal entries, and multi-currency events. So these are the various events which will be generated as part of the inbound gateway service. Now for the adjustment, before we go actually into adjustment based events, for each of these events they need to be generated for each instrument, each asset class and each instrument in that asset class. So there could be and there would be a possibility to identify rules, event generation rules, cancellation rules, rebooking rules, all the required rules for event processing as part of the event generation process for each of the instruments and within each of the asset class in scope. So there would be cases where asset class or an instrument within an asset class will need to be handled differently from other instruments and other asset classes. So all those differences need to be identified, documented, and detailed out as part of the requirement definition of the inbound gateway service. Okay, let's move on to the adjustment based events. As part of the adjustment based event, we'll identify adjustment rules, event modification rules for cancellation, rebooking, and other adjustments. Then we also need to understand and identify the various mapping of an event with other events. Like if it's an asset servicing event, the underlying transaction for which the asset servicing is taking place will also change if the asset servicing event is altered. Similarly, if it's a normal trade event and that needs to be modified, there could be a change in the lots and matches which have been created when the original event was developed or generated. So in this case, what we have to do is identify and document rules for each and every instrument and each and every kind of transaction, and identify the entire mapping tree and the relationships across the instruments for a particular event. So all this is pretty complex. It is said that done, and will involve a lot of attention from the project management team, from the business analysis team, and it's very critical to get this right, because events are the key to the future processing or further processing in the CSL. Any event which is generated or modified or adjusted has to have appropriate rules applied to it, otherwise the positions in the book will not be correct. Thanks a lot for your time, and let's open for discussion now and get your views on what do you feel are the critical areas. Do you feel the complexity the way we see it? Is it more than what the way you see it? Or are there some areas of complexity which you think we have missed out? Or are there any other areas of complexity which we need to look into? Or there is a possibility that we might not have considered all these complexities when making our estimation. So we also need to discuss whether this is really as complex as we think it is, or you take a simplistic view, and is it because you have a reason, or is it because of oversight? So let's have the discussion, and Mike, why don't you start with your views? So before we do that, we'll take a few minutes break. Thanks, and we'll reassemble in 5 minutes. Thanks a lot.